Hey everyone, around here, HOAs don't win, Karens get humbled, and sweet revenge is always on the menu. Hit that subscribe button, trust me, you're not gonna wanna miss how this one ends. Tyler had no idea that his grandmother's slightly overgrown rose bushes would lead to a full-scale HOA war. But there stood Patricia, the neighborhood's self-appointed HOA enforcer, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon of mass destruction. Her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the metal surface as she glared at the modest two-story house where Tyler's 78-year-old grandmother Dorothy had lived peacefully for the past 40 years. "This is completely unacceptable," Patricia announced to no one in particular, her voice carrying that particular brand of entitled fury that only comes from someone who has never been told. No, in their entire privileged existence, those rose bushes are at least 6 inches over the approved height limit. And don't even get me started on that mailbox. The paint is clearly faded beyond HOA standards. Tyler, who had been visiting his grandmother for their weekly Sunday dinner, stepped out onto the porch, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Is there a problem?" Patricia whipped around, her eyes narrowing as she sized him up like he was some kind of criminal. "Yes, there absolutely is a problem," she snapped. "Your grandmother has been violating multiple HOA regulations for months, and I have had enough." Tyler blinked, confused. "My grandmother has lived here for 4 decades. I think she knows the rules." Patricia's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Well, clearly she doesn't, because look at this mess." She gestured wildly at the front yard, which to Tyler looked perfectly normal. Sure, the rose bushes were a little fuller than some of the other yards, but they were beautiful and well maintained. The mailbox might have needed a fresh coat of paint, but it wasn't exactly an eyesore, ma'am, Tyler said, trying to keep his voice level. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Patricia straightened up, her clipboard held high like a shield. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you your grandmother needs to fix these violations immediately, or I'll be forced to take further action." Tyler felt his jaw tighten. "Further action? What kind of further action?" Patricia's smile was cold and calculating. "Well, let's just say the HOA has ways of dealing with residents who refuse to comply." Tyler was about to respond when the front door opened and his grandmother Dorothy stepped out onto the porch. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, and the kind of gentle smile that could disarm anyone. She wore a floral apron over her Sunday dress and had flour on her hands from the apple pie she'd been making. "Hello, Patricia," she said warmly, her voice carrying the slight southern accent she'd never quite lost despite living in this suburban neighborhood for decades. "How are you today, dear?" Patricia's expression hardened. "Don't you?" "Hello, Patricia. Me, Dorothy. You know exactly why I'm here." Dorothy tilted her head slightly as if genuinely confused. "I'm afraid I don't, dear." "What seems to be the trouble?" Patricia thrust her clipboard forward. "Your property is in violation of multiple HOA regulations, and I've been more than patient, but my patience has run out." Dorothy glanced at Tyler with a look that seemed to say, "Can you believe this?" Then turned back to Patricia with that same gentle smile. "Oh my, what regulations might those be?" Patricia's voice rose dramatically. "Your rose bushes are overgrown, your mailbox needs repainting, and your garden gnome is not on the approved decorations list." Dorothy looked genuinely surprised. "Garden gnome?" Patricia pointed accusingly at a small ceramic gnome peeking out from behind the roses. "That hideous thing has got to go." Dorothy's eyes twinkled with what Tyler recognized as barely contained amusement. "Oh, that little fellow. He was a gift from my late husband. I've had him for 30 years. Patricia rolled her eyes. "I don't care if it was a gift from the Pope himself. It's not approved, and it needs to go along with everything else." Tyler stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. Those are minor issues, at best." Patricia spun toward him, her face flushing red. "Minor issues? The HOA exists to maintain property values and community standards, and your grandmother's blatant disregard for the rules is bringing down the entire neighborhood." Dorothy placed a gentle hand on Tyler's arm. "It's all right, dear." Then she looked at Patricia with that same sweet smile. "Tell me, Patricia, what exactly are you proposing?" I do. Patricia's chest puffed up with self-importance. You have 72 hours to fix all violations, or I'll be filing a formal complaint with the county and recommending immediate eviction proceedings. Tyler's eyes widened. Eviction? You can't evict someone for rose bushes being too tall. Patricia's smile was venomous. Watch me. And then without another word, she turned on her designer heels and marched back toward her pristine house across the street. Tyler turned to his grandmother, who was still smiling serenely. Grandma Dorothy, are you okay? Dorothy patted his arm. Oh, I'm fine, dear, though I do think Patricia might be overestimating her authority just a bit. Tyler frowned. What do you mean? Dorothy's eyes sparkled again. Well, let's just say Patricia is relatively new to the neighborhood. She moved in about 5 years ago, and I don't think she's done her homework. Tyler was about to ask what she meant, when Dorothy disappeared back into the house, returning a moment later, with a manila folder. Tyler, dear, she said, handing him the folder. Would you mind taking a look at this? Tyler opened the folder, and his jaw dropped. Inside were dozens of official documents, property deeds, city council meeting minutes, and what looked like legal papers from the county clerk's office. Grandma Dorothy, what is all this? Dorothy's gentle smile never wavered. Oh, just some old paperwork, dear. But Tyler was already reading the property deeds showed that Dorothy didn't just own her house. She owned the entire block and 3 others. The city council documents showed her name listed as mayor for the past 12 years, and the county papers indicated she was also the largest private landowner in the entire township. Tyler looked up at his grandmother, his mouth hanging open. Grandma Dorothy, you're the mayor? Dorothy chuckled softly. Yes, dear, I have been for quite some time. Tyler stared at the documents. You own half the town. Well, Dorothy said modestly, maybe a third. Tyler's brain was reeling. Why didn't you ever tell me? Dorothy shrugged. I don't like to make a fuss. Besides, most people around here know, and the ones who don't, well, I suppose they haven't been paying attention. Tyler looked across the street where Patricia was probably inside her house, plotting her next move. Does Patricia know? Dorothy's eyes twinkled with mischief. Oh, I don't think so. Dear, she's never bothered to introduce herself properly or attend any city council meetings. If she had, she might have recognized me. Tyler felt a grin spreading across his face, so when she threatened to file a complaint with the county, Dorothy nodded. She'd be filing it with me, and the eviction proceedings. Dorothy's laugh was like silver bells. Oh dear, that would be quite impossible since I own the property she's trying to evict. Me from Tyler started laughing. He couldn't help it. The whole situation was so absurd. Patricia had just threatened to evict the mayor from property she owned while violating HOA rules that didn't actually apply, because his grandmother basically was the authority grandma. Dorothy, this is incredible. What are you going to do? Dorothy looked thoughtful. Well, I suppose I should have a proper conversation with Patricia. She seems to be under some misconceptions about how things work around here. Tyler grinned. Can I watch? Dorothy winked at him. I was hoping you'd ask the next morning. Tyler was sipping coffee on his grandmother's porch when Patricia emerged from her house, carrying what looked like an even larger clipboard and several manila envelopes. She marched across the street with the determination of someone who believed they held all the cards. Tyler nudged his grandmother, who was watering her allegedly non-compliant rose bushes. Here she comes. Grandma Dorothy. Dorothy straightened up and gave Patricia her warmest smile. Good morning. Patricia, you're up early. Patricia's expression was triumphant. Dorothy, I hope you've used the time to think about our conversation yesterday, because I've been busy. Dorothy tilted her head. Oh, have you, dear? What have you been up to? Patricia held up the envelopes. I've filed formal complaints with the county zoning office, the city planning department, and the mayor's office. She paused dramatically. Your little garden party is over. Dorothy. Tyler had to bite his lip to keep from laughing out loud. Dorothy just nodded thoughtfully. Oh my, that does sound like a lot of work. Patricia's chest swelled with pride. It was, but someone has to maintain standards around here. Dorothy, I've lived in upscale communities my entire life. and I know how these things work. Tyler watched his grandmother's face. She still wore that gentle smile, but there was something different in her eyes, a sharpness that suggested Patricia had no idea what she'd just walked into. Dorothy wiped her hands on her apron. Well, Patricia, since you've gone to so much trouble, I think we should probably discuss this properly. Why don't we sit down? Patricia remained standing. Thank you, but I prefer to handle official business standing. Dorothy nodded. Of course, dear. Whatever makes you comfortable now. About these complaints you filed. Patricia's smile was cold and satisfied. Yes, well, spoke to several very important people yesterday, and they assured me that violations like yours would be taken very seriously. Dorothy's eyebrows rose slightly. Oh, did they? Now who did you speak with? Patricia consulted her clipboard. I filed reports with the county zoning administrator, the city planning supervisor, and I left a very detailed message for the mayor's office. They'll be conducting a full investigation. Dorothy nodded. Slowly, I see. And what exactly did you tell them? Patricia's voice rose with righteous indignation. I told them that a resident was blatantly violating community standards with overgrown landscaping, unapproved decorations, and property maintenance issues that were negatively impacting neighborhood property values. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, and they said they would investigate. Patricia's smile was victorious. They said they would send someone out immediately to assess the situation and take appropriate action. Dorothy's smile grew a little wider. Well, that's wonderful. Patricia, I do appreciate thoroughness. Tyler was watching this exchange like a tennis match, waiting for his grandmother to drop the bomb, but Dorothy seemed content to let Patricia keep digging. Patricia consulted her clipboard again. Furthermore, I've also contacted the local newspaper to document this situation. The public has a right to know when community standards are being ignored. Dorothy's eyebrows shot up. Oh, the newspaper. How exciting. Patricia nodded smugly. Yes, I have a contact there, who's very interested in stories about neighborhood disputes and municipal failures. Tyler couldn't take it anymore. Grandma Dorothy, maybe you should tell Patricia about. Patricia cut him off. I don't think we need input from family members. This is between Dorothy and the proper authorities. Dorothy placed a gentle hand on Tyler's arm. It's all right. Dear Patricia clearly has everything well in hand. Then she turned back to Patricia. Tell me, dear, this contact at the newspaper. What did you promise them? Patricia's eyes gleamed. Oh, I told them they could get exclusive coverage of a major HOA enforcement action and municipal negligence. It's going to be front page news. Dorothy nodded thoughtfully. My goodness, that does sound like quite a story. Patricia, you've certainly been thorough. Patricia preened under what she mistook for admiration. I always am, Dorothy. When I commit to something, I see it through to the end. Dorothy's smile never wavered. Well then, I suppose we should prepare for quite a busy day. Tyler was practically vibrating with anticipation. When is all this supposed to happen? Patricia checked her watch. The county inspector should be here within the hour. The city planner said he'd be by before noon. And my newspaper contact is coming this afternoon for photos and interviews. Dorothy clapped her hands together. Oh, how exciting. Tyler, I think we should put on a fresh pot of coffee. We might have quite a few visitors today. Tyler grinned. Absolutely. Grandma Dorothy. Patricia looked pleased that Dorothy was finally taking this seriously. Yes, well, I'm glad you're finally understanding the gravity of the situation. Dorothy, I tried to be neighborly, but you left me no choice. Dorothy nodded. I can see that, Patricia. You've certainly made your position very clear. Patricia straightened her shoulders. Good, then we understand each other. Dorothy smiled, that sweet, gentle smile that Tyler now realized was absolutely terrifying. When you knew what was behind it. Oh yes, Patricia, I think we understand each other perfectly. Just then a white county vehicle pulled up to the curb. Patricia's eyes lit up. Ah, here's the inspector. Now Dorothy smoothed her apron. Well, I suppose we should go introduce ourselves. Patricia was already marching toward the vehicle, her clipboard clutched triumphantly in her hand. Tyler followed his grandmother as she walked calmly, Behind Patricia, like she was strolling through a park, a middle-aged man in a county uniform got out of the vehicle, looking around with the expression of someone who wasn't entirely sure why he was there. "Excuse me," he called out. "I'm looking for the complainant regarding property violations." Patricia waved her clipboard frantically. "That's me. I'm Patricia Morrison. I filed the complaint." Dorothy approached with Tyler beside her. "Good morning," she said pleasantly. "You must be from the county office." The inspector nodded. "Ma'am, I'm Inspector Rodriguez. I received a complaint about HOA violations, and I'm here to assess the situation." Patricia stepped forward aggressively. "Yes, exactly. This woman," she pointed at Dorothy, "has been flagrantly violating community standards for months." Inspector Rodriguez looked around the property, his expression growing confused. "Ma'am, I have to say, I'm not seeing any obvious violations. The landscaping looks well maintained." And Dorothy stepped forward with a gentle smile. "Inspector Rodriguez, is it? I'm Dorothy Campbell, pleased to meet you." Inspector Rodriguez's expression changed completely. "Mayor Campbell," he said with obvious surprise. "I didn't realize you were involved in this situation." Patricia's triumphant smile faltered slightly. "Mayor," she said weakly. Dorothy nodded. "Yes, dear. I've been mayor for about 12 years now, though I don't make a big fuss about it." Patricia's face had gone pale. The inspector looked from Dorothy to Patricia and back again. "Ma'am, if I may ask, who exactly filed this complaint?" Patricia raised a shaking hand. "That would be me. But I didn't know." Inspector Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I see. Well, ma'am, I have to tell you that filing false complaints is a serious matter." And Patricia's voice came out as a squeak. "False." Inspector Rodriguez gestured toward the property. "Ma'am, there are no HOA violations here. The property is immaculate. And furthermore," he looked at his paperwork, "this entire block is zoned differently than the rest of the neighborhood. These properties are exempt from standard HOA regulations due to their historical significance and original land grants." Patricia swayed slightly. "Exempt?" Dorothy's eyes twinkled. "Yes, dear. This block was part of the original township land. Grant, my late husband and I purchased it back in the 1980s, long before any HOA existed." Inspector Rodriguez nodded. "That's correct, ma'am. And as mayor, you would have been involved in establishing the current zoning regulations." Patricia looked like she was about to faint. Tyler was trying not to laugh out loud as he watched Patricia's world crumble around her. But wait, there's more. Another vehicle pulled up, this one from the city planning department. A woman in a business suit got out, carrying a tablet, and looking around with the same confused expression as Inspector Rodriguez. "Patricia Morrison," she called out. "I'm Janet Williams from City Planning. I received a complaint about municipal negligence." Patricia's hand rose weakly again. "That was me." Janet Williams approached the group looking official until she spotted Dorothy. Then her expression shifted to one of warm recognition. "Mayor Campbell," she said, with a bright smile. "How lovely to see you. I wasn't expecting to find you here." Dorothy smiled back. "Hello, Janet. How are the kids?" Janet beamed. "They're wonderful, thank you for asking. Tommy just started college on that scholarship program you helped establish." Dorothy waved dismissively. "Oh, that was nothing, dear." Patricia was staring back and forth between them, like she was watching a nightmare unfold. Janet turned to Patricia. "You must be the complainant, ma'am. Could you explain the nature of your complaint about municipal negligence?" Patricia's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. I thought there was, someone told me." Dorothy gently interrupted. Patricia was under the impression that my property was in violation of city standards. Janet looked around the property, her confusion deepening. "Ma'am, this is one of the most beautiful properties in the township, and it's historically protected under municipal preservation guidelines." Patricia made a strangled sound. "Historically protected?" Janet nodded. "Absolutely. This block represents some of our finest examples of original township architecture and landscaping. And of course Mayor Campbell has been instrumental in our historic preservation efforts." Patricia slumped against Tyler's car, looking like she might need medical attention. But Inspector Rodriguez wasn't finished. Ma'am, I do need to inform you that filing false complaints with county officers is considered a misdemeanor and can result in fines and potential legal action. Patricia's eyes widened. Legal action, Janet added, and city planning takes false reports very seriously, especially when they waste municipal resources and time. Tyler finally couldn't contain himself anymore and started chuckling, which made Dorothy give him a warning look, though her eyes were definitely twinkling. Patricia was now completely pale and shaking slightly. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought I was helping the community. Dorothy's expression softened. Oh dear, I can see you meant well, but perhaps next time you might want to research the situation more thoroughly. Inspector Rodriguez was writing something on his clipboard. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to sign a statement, acknowledging that this complaint was filed in error. Patricia nodded miserably. Yes, of course, whatever you need. Janet was also taking notes. And I'll need to file a report about the misuse of city resources. But given that this appears to be a misunderstanding rather than malicious intent, I think we can resolve this with a warning. Patricia signed whatever they put in front of her, looking like she wanted to disappear into the ground. Both officials said their goodbyes to Dorothy, with obvious respect and warmth, before heading back to their vehicles, leaving Patricia standing alone looking utterly defeated. Dorothy turned to her, with that same gentle smile. Patricia dear, are you all right? You look a bit pale. Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. Mayor Campbell, I am so sorry, I had no idea. Dorothy waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't worry about it, dear. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from. Patricia nodded, frantically. Yes, absolutely. I will definitely be more careful in the future. Dorothy smiled warmly. I'm sure you will, dear. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to get ready for my next visitor. Patricia looked confused. Next visitor? Just then another car pulled up, and a young woman with a camera and notepad got out, looking around with obvious interest. Patricia's face went white. Oh no. The reporter. Tyler grinned. Oh, this should be good. The reporter approached the group with a professional smile. I'm Sarah Chen, from the Tribune. I'm here about the neighborhood dispute and municipal negligence story. Patricia made a sound like a dying animal. Mayor Campbell. Dorothy extended her hand. I'm Dorothy Campbell. Pleased to meet you. Sarah shook Dorothy's hand, then paused. Wait, Dorothy Campbell, the mayor. Dorothy nodded. Yes, dear, that's right. Sarah looked around confused. I was told there was a story about HOA violations and municipal failures. Patricia, who looked like she might pass out at any moment, managed to speak. That was a misunderstanding. Sarah's eyebrows rose. A misunderstanding. Tyler couldn't help himself. The person who called you didn't realize she was complaining about the mayor to the mayor about property the mayor owns. Sarah stared at Patricia. Is that true? Patricia nodded miserably. Completely true. I made a terrible mistake. Sarah looked around the group, then started laughing. This is actually a much better story than what I came for. She turned to Dorothy. Mayor Campbell, would you be willing to give me an interview about misconceptions regarding local government and the importance of civic engagement? Dorothy's eyes sparkled. I think that would be wonderful, dear. Tyler watched as Patricia slowly backed away from the group, looking like she wanted to dissolve into the sidewalk. The reporter was already setting up for photos. Dorothy was graciously agreeing to discuss municipal governance and civic responsibility, and Patricia was realizing that her attempt to humiliate his grandmother was about to become front-page news for all the wrong reasons. Sarah was asking Dorothy about the importance of residents understanding local government structure, while Patricia stood frozen like a deer in headlights. Mayor Campbell, Sarah said, how do you think situations like this could be prevented in the future? Dorothy looked thoughtful. Well, I think it starts with community engagement, dear.
When residents take an interest in local government and civic processes, they're much less likely to misunderstand how things work. She glanced kindly at Patricia. Sometimes people move to a new community and assume they understand how everything operates, without taking the time to learn about local history and governance. Sarah nodded. That makes sense. And what would you say to residents who might be concerned about property standards and community appearance? Dorothy's smile was warm. Well, I'd say those are valid concerns, and there are proper channels for addressing them. We have city council meetings every month where residents can voice concerns and learn about municipal processes. We also have a very responsive planning department that's always happy to answer questions about zoning and regulations. Patricia was edging toward her house, but Sarah noticed her. Excuse me, she called out. You're the resident who filed the complaint, right? Would you like to comment? Patricia stopped dead in her tracks and slowly turned around. Her face was completely red, and she looked like she was about to cry. I'd rather not comment, she managed to stammer. Sarah pressed gently. Can you tell me what led to the misunderstanding? Patricia glanced desperately at Dorothy, who gave her an encouraging nod. Go ahead, dear, Dorothy said gently. We all learned from our mistakes. Patricia took a shaky breath. I moved here 5 years ago, and I thought I understood the HOA regulations. But I didn't research the actual zoning laws or realize who I was dealing with. I made assumptions and I was completely wrong. Sarah scribbled notes. So you filed complaints against the mayor about property she owns in a zone that's exempt from the regulations you thought applied? Patricia nodded miserably. Yes, exactly. I feel terrible about wasting everyone's time and resources. Sarah looked up from her notepad. What's your takeaway from this experience? Patricia glanced at Dorothy again, then back at Sarah. I think the lesson is that you should understand your community before you try to change it. And definitely know who you're talking to before you make accusations. Dorothy placed a gentle hand on Patricia's arm. You handled that very well, dear. Patricia looked surprised. Really? Dorothy nodded. Yes, taking responsibility for our mistakes is how we grow. Sarah finished her notes and packed up her camera. This is going to make a great piece about civic engagement and community understanding. Mayor Campbell, thank you for your time. Dorothy smiled. It was my pleasure, dear. After Sarah left, Patricia stood awkwardly in the driveway, looking like she wanted to say something, but wasn't sure how. Tyler was still grinning at the whole situation. While Dorothy began deadheading her allegedly non-compliant roses, Patricia finally spoke up. Mayor Campbell, I owe you a sincere apology. I was completely out of line. Dorothy looked up from her flowers. Oh dear, you don't need to apologize. We sorted everything out, didn't we? Patricia shook her head. No, I do need to apologize. I was rude and presumptuous, and I made a fool of myself. You could have humiliated me, but you didn't. Dorothy's smile was genuinely warm. Patricia dear, I've been in local government long enough to know that public embarrassment rarely teaches the lessons we hope it will. Besides, you're my neighbor, and neighbors should look out for each other. Patricia's eyes welled up with tears. You're being much kinder than I deserve. Dorothy wiped her hands on her apron. Nonsense. We all have moments. We're not proud of the important thing is what we do next. Patricia nodded. I'd like to start over if that's possible. Maybe learn more about the community and actually participate, instead of just complaining. Dorothy clapped her hands together. That sounds wonderful, dear. The city council meets the first Monday of every month, and we always need volunteers for community events. Patricia smiled for the first time since this whole thing started. I'd like that very much. Tyler watched his grandmother invite Patricia in for coffee and a slice of apple pie, as if the last 2 days hadn't happened, as if Patricia hadn't just tried to get her evicted from her own property and embarrass her in front of the whole neighborhood. That was his grandmother. Dorothy, always finding ways to turn enemies into friends and conflicts into learning experiences. As they headed inside, Dorothy turned back to her roses. which were still perfectly beautiful and slightly overgrown, just the way she liked them. And Tyler realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just being so completely secure in who you are that other people's attempts to diminish you only highlight their own ignorance. And when Patricia's story ran in the Tribune the next week under the headline, "Local Resident Learns Civic Lesson After Mistakenly Challenging Mayor," it became a feel-good story about community engagement and the importance of understanding local government rather than the public humiliation. Patricia had feared Dorothy made sure of that, because that's the kind of person she was. And Patricia, true to her word, became one of the most active members of the City Council Volunteer Corps, learning everything she could about local government and becoming one of Dorothy's strongest supporters in future municipal elections. Because sometimes the people who challenge us the most end up teaching us the most about ourselves. And sometimes a little grace goes a lot further than a lot of revenge. Tyler kept that manila folder, though, just in case anyone else wanted to underestimate his grandmother.